Hello and welcome to our first exploring session for The Elder Brother. Here we are Beyond Shakespeare. I'll be your host today, Mark Pajor. Our usual host, Rob, is elsewhere. This is a play by John Fletcher and Philip Massinger. I know very little else about it, and we are going to see what the deal is with this elder brother. Our readers today, we have reading Prologue, Ralph and Egremont.
Lord.
And reading Angelina and Charles.
Sarah Blake, coming to you from The Hague.
Reading Andrew and Miramont.
Aliki in Athens.
I will be reading the role of Lois and reading Sylvia and Eustace.
Lois in London.
And reading Gilbert and Cowsy.
Alan in Suffolk.
And reading Brisac.
I'm Eric. I'm here. I almost forgot I was meant to be here, but I mean, it's fine. My brain is not burnt through it all. It's fine.
Well, I'm glad that you're meant to be here and that you are here. And yeah, we're going to just launch right into it, beginning with a prologue, and we will go straight into Act 1, Scene 1 from there. When you're ready, take it away, prologue.
Okay. But that it would take from our modesty to praise the writer or the comedy till your fair suffrage crown it, I should say you are all most welcome to no vulgar play, and so far we are confident. And if he that made it still lives in your memory, you will expect what we present tonight should be judged worthy of your ears and sight. You shall hear Fletcher in it, his true strain, and neat expressions. Living, he did gain your good opinions, but now dead, commends this orphan to the care of noble friends. And may it raise in you content and mirth, and be received for a legitimate birth. Your grace erects new trophies to his fame, and shall to after times preserve his name.
Nay, I must walk you farther.
Sir, and then shoveled it home.
'Tis for your health. The want of exercise takes from your beauties, and sloth dries up your sweetness. That you are my only daughter and my heir is granted, and you in thankfulness must needs acknowledge you ever find me an indulgent father and open-handed.
Nor can you tax me, sir, I hope, for want of duty to deserve these favours from you.
No, my Angelina, I love and cherish thy obedience to me, which my care to advance thee shall confirm. All that I aim at is to win thee from the practice of an idle, foolish state used by great women, who think any labour, though in the service of themselves, a blemish to their fair fortunes.
Make me understand, sir. What 'tis you point at?
At the custom how virgins of wealthy families waste their youth. After a long sleep, when you wake, your woman presents your breakfast. Then you sleep again, then rise, and being trimmed up by others' hands, you're led to dinner, and that ended either to cards or to your couch, as if you were born without motion. After this to supper, and then to bed, and so your life runs round without variety or action, daughter.
Oh, here's a learned lecture.
From this idleness, diseases both in body and in mind grow strong upon you, where a stirring nature with wholesome exercise guards both from danger. I'll have thee rise with the sun, walk, dance, or hunt, visit the groves and springs, and learn the virtue of plants and simples. Do this moderately, and thou shalt not, with eating chalk or coals, leather, and oatmeal, and such other trash, fall into the green sickness.
With your pardon, were you but pleased to minister it, I could prescribe a remedy for my lady's health and her delight, too, far transcending those your lordship but now mentioned.
What is it, Sylvia?
What is it? A noble husband. In that word, noble husband, all content of women is wholly comprehended. He will rouse her, as you say, with the sun, and so pipe to her, as she will dance, ne'er doubt it, and hunt with her upon occasion until both be weary, and then The knowledge of your plants and simples, as I take it, were superfluous. A loving but add to it, a gamesome bedfellow, being the sure physician.
Well said, wench.
And who gave you commission to deliver your verdict, minion?
I deserve a fee, and not a frown, dear madam. I but speak her thoughts, my lord, and what her modesty refuses to give voice to. Show no mercy to a maidenhead of 14, but off with it. Let her lose no time, sir. Fathers that deny their daughters lawful pleasure when ripe for them, in some kinds edge their appetites to taste of the fruit that is forbidden.
'Tis well urged, and I prove it. No more blushing, girl. Thy woman hath spoke truth, and so prevented what I meant to move to thee. There dwells near us a gentleman of blood, Monsieur Brisac, of a fair state, 6,000 crowns per annum, the happy father of 2 hopeful sons of different breeding, the elder a mere scholar, the younger a quaint courtier.
Such knew them by public fame, though yet I never saw them. And that opposed antipathy between their various dispositions renders them the general discourse and argument. One part inclining to the scholar Charles, the other side preferring Eustace as a man complete in courtship.
And which way, if of these 2 you were to choose a husband, doth your affection sway you?
To be plain, sir, since you will teach me boldness, as they are simply themselves, to neither. Let a courtier be never so exact, let him be blessed with all parts that yield him to a virgin gracious. If he depend on others and stand not on his own bottoms, though he have the means to bring his mistress to a mask, or by conveyance from some great one's lips to taste such favour from the king's, or grant he purchase precedency in the country to be sworn a servant extraordinary to the queen, nay, though he live in expectation of some huge preferment in reversion, if he want a present fortune at the best, those are but glorious dreams, and only yield him a happiness in posse, not in esse. Nor can they fetch him silks from the mercer, nor discharge a tailor's bill, nor, in full plenty, which still preserves a quiet bed at home, maintain a family.
Aptly considered, and to my wish. But what's thy censure of the scholar?
Troth, if he be nothing else, as of the courtier. All his songs and sonnets, his amigrams, acrostics, epigrams, his deep and philosophical discourse of nature's hidden secrets, make not up a perfect husband. He can hardly borrow the stars of the celestial crown to make me a tire for my head. Nor Charles Waine for a coach, nor Ganymede for a page, nor a rich gown from Juno's wardrobe, nor would I lie in, for I despair not once to be a mother, under heaven's spangled canopy, or banquet my guests and gossips with imagined nectar. Pure Orleans would do better. No, father, though I could be well pleased to have my husband a courtier and a scholar, young and valiant, these are but gaudy nothings, if they be not something to make a substance.
And what is that?
A full estate. But that said, I've said all, and get me such a one with these additions. Farewell virginity, and welcome wedlock.
But where is such one to be met with, daughter? A black swan is more common. You may wear great tresses ere we find him.
I am not so punctual in all ceremonies. I will not bate 2 or 3 of these good parts before I'll dwell too long upon the choice.
Only, my lord, remember that he be rich and active, for without these the others yield no relish, but these perfect you must bear with small faults, madam.
A merry wench, and it becomes you well. I'll to Brisac and tell what may be done. In the meantime, home, and feast thy thoughts with the pleasures of a bride.
Thoughts are but airy food, sir. Let her taste them.
Great. Well read, everybody. All right. Let's discuss not only this scene, but also the prologue, if anyone has any thoughts. Lois.
Well, obviously, it dates from a period after Fletcher's death, which was in 1625. and it's a revival, and which is one reason why they think it's partly Massinger, since he apparently did revise some of Fletcher's plays later. They may also have written it together. We don't really know. At least I don't. But it shows already that, he's a highly esteemed dramatist, and there's a sort of expectation if it's by Fletcher, it's going to be good.
Sarah, thoughts?
This is a hoot. I mean, like, I wasn't expecting this to be so funny straight off the bat, but it really is. And Angelina is a scream. I'm so happy with this opening scene, like, and not just because I'm playing her, but just because, like, it's a riot. And the fact that she's like, oh, yes, well, scholar would be very nice, courtier would be very nice, but I need the money. I need the big house in the country.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. It's giving me strong Oscar Wilde vibes, and we're not going to get there for like another 300 years. But what a great opening.
Yes, you can't floor the exposition, can you? I mean, if you haven't figured it out by now.
Aliki.
Yeah, also how delightful to have a bride's pleasures advertised rather than, oh, you have to get married, otherwise your honor is at risk, or your father's money, or something like that. Fantastic.
Although given all the emphasis these days on underage women, and so on, it seems to me that the emphasis here is a bit odd. As soon as she's 14, she's ready for it. Come on, bring on the sex.
Yeah, okay, we could, a modern production might make it at 18, but
Sarah, did you have something quick, or I'll go to Alan otherwise?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to ask, like, where did it say she was 14? I missed that completely.
It was in there in the speech.
yeah,
Father's speech.
Yeah.
Show no mercy
okay,
to a
yeah.
maidenhead of 14, but
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right.
So we would have.
I mean,
to
even
change
Juliet's father said, leave it a couple of years when she's.
that. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we'd have to
Right.
have to age her up slightly, I think, for modern production.
Yeah,
That's worth,
not too hard to do, though, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Alan.
Well, I think we've got a subtitle for the play already, Gold Diggers of 1630.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the title, knowing that it's called The Elder Brother, and we're talking about two different brothers. Might give us a certain sense of who might be central to this story. Eric.
I just like the segue at the beginning. It just starts off with like, "Nay, I must woke you, father, but I'm so tired." And and he's like, "Yeah, it's for your health. It's for exercise." And then somehow we segue from that into marriage. It feels a bit like, okay, what on earth? It makes sense, but I mean, also like,
Sarah.
Yeah, I also really liked Sylvia. I mean, Sylvia is, I think, a servant. But she's kind of like, that's a really interesting dynamic, because the fact that she, isn't afraid to give her opinion and holds forth, even though Angelina's calling her minion. It's kind of like, she's a really interesting character. So there's this, and she's very articulate and obviously very, clever. So this bodes well.
Alan.
Yeah, I think what you've got with Sylvia is she's effectively could even have been the nurse of this girl from childhood. A long-established family retainer who's had charge of someone whose father doesn't really know how to deal with her.
I just, if I may jump in, I just like the part about like, well, your woman presents your breakfast, then you sleep again, then rise, being trimmed by others' hands. You just kind of, it's like, it feels very sort of modern and contemporary, because it's like, oh yeah, all you do, you're a teenager, you sleep all day, what on earth? And like, you don't do anything else. You text your friends, that's all you do. You don't actually talk to another human being. Or like, you could twist it to be like that sort of modern discourse about, or postmodern if you want to be fancy,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
to me, it read a little less like. Yeah, it's a little unclear to me how much he's saying like this has been your life so far. You're being kind of lazy, like a lot of noble women, or if he's just kind of saying like don't fall into that trap, like so many people do.
Yeah.
I feel like it could, from this quick read, I feel like it could be read either way.
Mm.
She's almost like the way she's described is like a character in a restoration comedy. They're one of those the idle rich that seem to populate those plays. Nothing to do with the ladies want lunch, I suppose.
Yeah.
Or in this case, teenagers.
Mm.
But you
Other
get the bit about sorry.
No, go for it.
You get the bit about like I'd have thee rise with the sun, walk, dance, or hunt, visit the groves and springs, which is kind of like it's almost like he wants her to be like Diana / Artemis, but not. Because obviously Diana is known for like virginity.
Mm.
Other thoughts on this first scene or the prologue?
Well, I guess also this is a way of making him money. Because, you know, okay, he has to give a dowry, but then, you know, if there's a sort of retainer fee, so to speak, by the family, like sort of not retainer, what do you call it? It's something that the wife would earn to sort of have for the household, and like he wouldn't have to pay for her food or money or anything else.
Oh.
In money, I don't know.
Lois, what were you going to say about that?
I don't know. I mean, I find it is quite a charming scene. It's partly just that it's quite richly written. I mean, every line does something. You know, there's not that sense of people just coming out with cliche after cliche, and the situation is rather amusing. I mean, first father saying, "Come on, you should get out more, you know, do more," and then the maid saying, "You know, if you really want her to do that, get her a husband, and you know, it'll take care of itself." And then he says, "Well, yes, I do have a couple in mind." I mean, it's even possible that that you could play it as if the whole thing had been set up between the father and Sylvia. You know, bring up the husbands, and then I'll tell her what I was thinking about. I mean, why is he taking her for a walk? You know, let's go for a walk. I've got something to talk about with you. I don't know, the whole thing. There's a sense of a rather nice three-way relationship here.
Aliki, I think you were raising your hand a
Yeah,
bit
I just
earlier.
he said she's his heir, which suggests that he has money to leave. So I don't think money for him is a consideration.
Yeah, I feel like it reads to me so far like he just wants what's best for his daughter, but we'll see where things go. Yeah, any other thoughts before we move on to scene 2? All right, scene 2, we have enter Andrew, Ralph the cook, and Gilbert the butler.
Unload part of the library and make room for the other dozen of carts. I'll straight be with you.
Why hath he more books?
More than 10 marts sent over.
Can you tell their names?
Names he has of as perfect as his paternoster. That's nothing. Has read them over leaf by leaf 3,000 times. But here's the wonder, though their weight would sink a Spanish carrack without other ballast, he carrieth them all in his head, and yet he walks upright.
Surely he has a strong brain.
If all thy pipes of wine were filled with books made of the barks of trees, or mysteries written in old moth-eaten vellum, he would sip thy cellar quite dry, and still be thirsty. Then's for his diet, he eats and digests more volumes at a meal than there would be larks though the sky should fall. Devoured a month in Paris, yet fear not, sons of the buttery and kitchen, though his learned stomach cannot be appeased, he'll seldom trouble you. His knowing stomach condemns your blackjacks, butler, and your flagons, and cook, thy boiled, thy roast, thy baked.
How liveth he?
What does other men do? Few princes fare like him. He breaks his fast with Aristotle, dines with Tully, takes his watering with the Muses, sups with Livy, then walks a turn or two in Via Lactea, and after 6 hours' conference with the stars, sleeps with old Era Pater.
This is admirable.
I'll tell you more hereafter. Here's my old master and another old ignorant elder. All upon them.
Enter Brisac and Lois.
What, Andrew? Welcome. Where's my Charles? Speak, Andrew. Where didst thou leave thy master?
Contemplating the number of the sands in the highway, and from that purposes to make a judgment of the remainder in the sea. He is, sir, in serious study, and will lose no minute, nor out of space to knowledge.
This is strange.
Yet he hath sent his duty, sir, before him in this fair manuscript.
Andrew gives a letter.
What have we here? Pothooks and irons?
I much pity you. It is the Syrian character, or the Arabic. Would ye have it said, so great and deep a scholar as Master Charles is, should ask blessing in any Christian language? Were it Greek, I could interpret for you, but I've gone no further.
And in Greek, you can lie with your smug wife, Lily.
If I keep her. From your French dialect, as I hope I shall, sir, how she is your laundress, she shall put you to the charge of no more soap than usual for the washing of your sheets.
Take in the knave and let him eat.
And drink, sir, too.
And drink too, sir, and see your master's chamber ready for him.
Come, Dr. Andrew, without disputation, thou shalt commence in the cellar.
I had rather commence on a cold baked meat.
Thou shalt have it, boy.
All right, let's pause there as we're introduced to not the person of the older brother, but to his character off stage, discussion of him. Thoughts so far on this scene? Sarah.
Got another really witty servant. I'm loving this. I'm loving the fact that the downstairs characters are so characterful and are proper dynamic moving pieces within the game of the play, and not just kind of I mean, it's not that we haven't had that before, we have, but it's been a while, I think, and also it's the fact that they're actually within the house. They're not. It's not like then it's not like they're out on the road and it's just the servant and the master, and so the clever servant gets to do their thing. It's the fact that actually within the house, the fact that they talk like this seems not only to be tolerated, Sylvia and Andrew, but actively encouraged, which is just kind of, I don't know, it's creating a really interesting picture of this society that we find ourselves in, because it's not quite the usual hierarchies that we get in most plays. The hierarchies are there, they're being talked about, but everything seems to be a lot more fluid.
Yeah, absolutely. Other thoughts? Lois?
Yeah, when an aristocrat was sent to university, a servant was sent along with him, and if the servant was clever enough, he could presumably pick up a great deal of learning, which Andrew appears to have done since he's learned Greek. At least he says he has. I mean, he may be being sent up as a pretentious twit. We don't really know yet, but it's something you do find actually in Restoration comedy. I can remember one Restoration play where the servant is also very witty and surprisingly well informed. But yeah, you also do get the impression of a rather pleasant household here.
Yeah, and I'm curious how much Brisac replies to the Greek comments, Greeks are up to a lot of sex and such. And so, perhaps Andrew's line is meant to be read that way too. He's just saying, like, I get up to a lot of things like that, like the Greeks.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that it's the servants who are introducing the character before he appears. which of course sets up all kinds of interesting expectations. And then, that gives the actor playing the part, we say, a lot of choices.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that we get that dynamic first before we meet things, which is normally reserved for lordly character, much more elevated, whatever. So I suppose it actually does feel like a restoration comedy.
Yeah.
If you shuttle the dates forward 50 years,
Yeah, it's certainly not the only play that we've read with Beyond Shakespeare that gives that vibe, that kind of proto restoration comedy feeling.
Yeah. Can I just say the punctuation is a nightmare.
Yeah, and the asides are never in the right place. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yes, I noticed Aliki's comment actually in the chat, and I think that speech of Andrew's does indicate that when Brisac says you can lie with your smug wife Lily, I think what he's saying is, if I keep her from your French dialect, as I hope I shall, sir. I mean, I could be, I don't know, it could be genuine badinage, I'll try to keep her out of your clutches, but it could also be that he's really worried that Brisac apparently is known for his roving hands and so on.
Yeah, the placement of the stage direction changed the meaning completely. I like your interpretation, and yeah. Anyway, let's maybe leave the script things for the chat, because we've got a lot to cover still, right?
Sarah.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on the fact that this feels very restoration. We've said that about the last 3 plays, I think, that we've read, and I think I'm as someone who really enjoys restoration comedy, I am finding this whole period, this sort of sort of post 16, sort of 10, 16, 15.
And real quick, the date range for this is 1615 to 1625. Go on,
okay,
Sarah.
there you go. Yeah, and I think the one we did a couple of weeks ago was 1630, and everyone we were saying then again about how it reminded us of a restoration play, and I think for me personally, as someone who loves restoration, it's just, this is a real education for me, because because of the Civil War, it's like, oh, well, there's Shakespeare, and there's, Middleton, and, there's Webster and Doobie-Doo, and then there's the Civil War, and then it's all suddenly really light and frothy and frivolous and satirical. And this is just really like schooling me, because I think I said in the last play we did, this is like a bridge, this period between what came before and what's going to come later in terms of the comedy. There's this, it's kind of the missing link between the city comedies that you get earlier on in this century and at the end of the last century, and then the restoration that's going to come later. And it doesn't seem to be quite as cruelly and sort of callously satirical as restoration comedy gets, but it's got that witty edge to it, and it's and it has this incredible dialogue, which isn't always easy to read. Restoration dialogue isn't easy to read either, but it's just it's so sharp, and the rhythm of it is has got so much momentum, and I'm finding it fascinating, because I think we are in like this bridging period that I for one had no idea existed, and more people should be reading this stuff and performing it.
Lois first, then I'll go to Alan.
Yeah, some of you might have read Dryden's dialogue about dramatic poesy, where several gentlemen in a boat in 1666, I think it is, are talking about, the whole history of English drama. And the character who sort of represents Dryden says that the Beaumont and Fletcher canon is, in fact, at that point, more popular than either Shakespeare or Johnson. And one reason is that they were very good at emulating the conversation of gentlemen. And that is what you get here, is a lot of upper middle class or aristocratic people talking in a very witty way, and their servants on the whole talking like that too. And something that the Restoration felt about the lower comedy characters is that why would you want to see people like that in the theater when you would avoid them in the street? And that's pretty much the way they put it. So anyway, that's one reason why this feels like Restoration drama, because Restoration drama was particularly inclined to imitate Fletcher.
Alan.
Yeah, I think because I raised the issue as well that Sarah referred to there about the feeling like Restoration. I think the thing is that in terms of performance history in recent times, and probably also in terms of study material for most people who are not academic specialists in early modern drama, is going to be that effectively this period of time from 1610 through 1640 is not that well represented on the modern stage. You know, so it's just an awful lot of material there which has been under the radar.
Eric, real quick thought, and then we'll continue on.
Well, the thing is, we have seen these characters before. I mean, we like in Marston, or like all the sort of what was it? I think it was Callisto and Melibea, where you had a character trying to sort of pimp out another character, and sort of go, yeah, she's. I mean, obviously, to a much bigger extent, because that was a whole different ballgame. But I mean, there are predecessors as well, so it's not that this is just like anti-Johnston or anti-other stuff, or like a sort of flip on it. But I guess like I mean, if you also read like Shoemaker's Holiday, that's also quite fun as well, but in a very different way. Even though it's written by Beaumont and Fletcher, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or just Fletcher.
Decker.
Yeah, Decker. Sorry. So it's
really about low life characters.
Yeah, so it's still like a very sort of bouncy dialogue play.
All right, well, let's feel that bounce as we continue. We have an exit of the three servant characters who have been on the stage, leaving just Brisac and Lois, I believe.
Good Monsieur Lois, I esteem myself much honored in your clear intent to join our ancient families and make them one. And 'twill take from my age and cares to live and see what you have purposed but in act, of which your visit at this present is an hopeful omen. I each minute expecting the arrival of my sons. I have not wronged their birth for want of means and education, to shape them to that course each was addicted. And therefore, that we may proceed discreetly, since what's concluded rashly seldom prospers, you first shall take a strict perusal of them, and then from your allowance your fair daughter may fashion her affection.
Monsieur Brisac, you offer fair and nobly, and I'll meet you in the same line of honor, and I hope, being blessed but with one daughter, I shall not appear impertinently curious, though with my utmost vigilance and study, I labor to bestow her to her worth. Let others speak her form, and future fortune from me descending to her, I in that sit down with silence.
You may, my lord, securely, since fame aloud proclaimeth her perfections, commanding all men's tongues to sing her praises. Should I say more, you might well censure me, what I never was, flatterer. What trampling's that without of horses?
And we have re-entering, who recently exited, Gilbert the butler.
Sir, my young masters are newly alighted.
Sir, now observe their several dispositions.
Exit Gilbert, enter Charles.
My subsizar carry my hackney to the buttery and give him his beaver. It is a civil and sober beast, and will drink moderately. And that done, turn him into the quadrangle.
He cannot out of his university tone.
Enter Eustace, Egremont, and Cowsy.
Lackey, take care our coursers be well rubbed and clothed. They have outstripped the wind in speed.
Ay, marry, sir, there's metal in this young fellow. What a sheep's look his elder brother has.
Your blessing, sir.
Charles kneels.
Rise, Charles, thou hast it.
Sir, though it be unusual in the court, since 'tis the courtier's garb, I bend my knee, and do expect what follows.
Eustace kneels.
courtly begged, my blessing take it.
Ha, your lordship's vowed adorer. What a thing this brother is. Yeah, I'll vouchsafe him the new Italian shrug.
Eustace bows to Charles.
How clownishly this bookworm does return it.
I'm glad you're well.
Charles plucks out a book and reads.
Pray you be happy in the knowledge of this pair of accomplished messieurs. They are gallants that have seen both tropics.
I embrace their love.
Which we'll repay with servilating.
I will report your bounty in the court.
I pray you make deserving use on it first. Eustace, give entertainment to your friends. What's in my house is theirs.
Which we'll make use of. Let's warm our brains with half a dozen healths, and then hang cold discourse, for we'll speak fireworks.
Exit Eustace, Egremont, and Cowsy. What, at his book already?
Fie, Charles, no hour of interruption.
So differs from Socrates in this.
Come, lay them by, let them agree at leisure.
Man's life, sir, being so short, and then the way that leads unto the knowledge of ourselves so long and tedious, each minute should be precious.
In our care to manage worldly business, you must part with this bookish contemplation and prepare yourself for action. To thrive in this age is held the blame of learning. You must study to know what part of my land's good for the plough and what for pasture, how to buy and sell to the best advantage, how to cure my oxen when they're overgrown with labor.
I may do this from what I've read, sir. For what concerns tillage, who better can deliver it than Virgil in his Georgics? And to cure your herds, his bucolics is a masterpiece. But when he does describe the commonwealth of bees, their industry and knowledge of the herbs from which they gather honey, with their care to place it with decorum in the hive, their government among themselves, their order in going forth and coming loaden home, their obedience to their king, and his rewards to such as labour, with his punishments only inflicted on the slothful drone, I'm ravished with it. And there, reap my harvest, and there receive the gain my cattle bring me, and there find wax and honey.
And grow rich in your imagination. Heyday, heyday, Georgics, bucolics, and bees. Art mad.
No, sir, the knowledge of these guards me from it.
But can you find among your bundle of books and put in all your dictionaries that speak all tongues what pleasure they enjoy that do embrace a well-shaped, wealthy bride? Answer me that.
'Tis frequent, sir, in story. There I read of all kinds of virtuous and vicious women, the ancient Spartan dames and Roman ladies, their beauties and deformities. And when I light our Portia or Cornelia, crowned with still flourishing leaves of truth and goodness, with such a feeling I peruse their fortunes, as if I then had lived and freely tasted their ravishing sweetness, at the present loving the whole sex for their goodness and example. But on the contrary, when I look on a Clytemnestra or a Tullia, first bathed in her husband's blood, the latter, without a touch of piety, driving on her chariot o'er her father's breathless trunk, horror invades my faculties. Comparing the multitudes of the guilty with the few that did die innocence, I detest and loathe them, as ignorance or atheism.
You resolve, then, to make payment of the debt you owe me.
Debt, good sir?
A debt I paid my father when I begat thee, and made him a grandsire, which I expect from you.
The children, sir, which I will leave to all posterity, begot and brought up by my painful studies, shall be my living issue.
Very well, and I shall have a general collection of all the quiddits from Adam to this time to be my grandchild.
And such a one, I hope, sir, as shall not shame the family.
Nor will you take care of my estate?
But in my wishes. For know, sir, that the wings on which my soul is mounted I've long since borne her too high to stoop to any prey that scares not upwards. Sordid and dunghill minds, composed of earth in that gross element, fix all their happiness. But purer spirits, purged and refined, shake off that clog of humane frailty. Give me leave to enjoy myself. That place does contain my books, the best companions, is to me a glorious court, where hourly I converse with the old sages and philosophers, and sometimes for variety I confer with kings and emperors, and weigh their counsels, calling their victories, if unjustly got, unto a strict account, and in my fancy deface their ill-placed statues. Can I then part with such constant pleasures to embrace uncertain vanities? No. Be it your care to augment your heap of wealth, it shall be mine to increase in knowledge. Lights there for my study.
Exit Charles, and we're going to pause momentarily, but let's get through to the next entrances. So Eric, let's continue with until enter Eustace.
Okay. Was ever man that had reason thus transported from all sense and feeling of his proper good? It vexes me, and if I found not comfort in young Eustace, I might well conclude my name were at a period.
He's indeed, sir, the surer base to build on.
Eustace.
And before
Sir?
Eustace's entrance, let's pause there now that we've actually seen Charles. Discuss him before we get into Eustace more fully. Thoughts, Eric?
Charles is in a different play by himself. And like Brisac is trying to get through to him. I think like he's obviously like they've had this discussion before, but sort of Charles will probably just be going off to do what he does. So I guess we'll see.
Sarah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I mean, on the one hand, I think we're supposed to feel sympathy for Charles, because his brother, who's the kind of swaggering Lord Flashheart type, comes in and he's like, oh God, my brother's such a clown, look at him. So, I think we're supposed to feel a bit of sympathy for Charles, but then he's just so funny. He's so pretentious. I was actually really feeling sympathy for the father, like, oh my God, just read a book about farming. No, I can get it all from Virgil. Oh my God, just again, I found it really funny and quite endearing because normally in these, father and son conversations, it's like your sympathies with the son, and the father's either a bit of a tyrant or a miser, or wants him, to do something unreasonable. And I mean, from Charles's perspective, he does want him to do something unreasonable. He's like, God, no, I'm not getting married. But from the father's perspective, you can really see like his side of it as well. And he's not just the usual terrible father trope. He's kind of quite funny, and you can have a bit of sympathy for him.
Yeah, Lois, do you have a thought?
Well, in many ways, Charles is a sort of caricature of the idea of a scholar with his head in the books and thinking of nothing else. But I mean, his father hasn't, in fact, seen him, I take it, for perhaps several years even, since he's gone off to university. And so this is really quite a shock. And what his father mainly wants is to have grandchildren and make sure they're heirs and the estate carries on and so on. And so of course, this is devastating to him. I think it's just I mean, nobody's ever been quite as idiotic as Charles is at this point, and I think it helps to think of him also as quite young. I mean, I think all four of these young people are essentially teenagers.
Yeah, I think there's a certain fun, like we'll see where it goes, but there's a certain way in which it feels potentially appealing to a modern audience, in terms of there's relative decline in people pursuing the humanities and discussion, at least in what I've heard in my world, of like, what's the point in pursuing the humanities? Like, people should be following, business and and other things like that. And yeah, it's basically what his dad is saying is like, learn the business, not these, authors. Who cares about them? Sarah, thoughts?
Yeah, just to pick up on what you're saying there, we have done comedies before. I cannot remember which ones they were. Eric might remember, or Lois might know. We have done plays before where we've commented that actually the thing that makes them work really successfully is the generation gap, and the fact that even though we do so many plays where the younger generation are fighting off the older generation, it does tend to be quite often quite stereotypical, but just every so often you get one where the dynamic, the tension between the older generation and the younger generation is just beautifully observed. And when that happens, they always really translate well to a modern audience because it's just such a universal thing. And we seem to have that here for sure. And I'm hoping it continues this way.
Yeah, and I'll mention real quick before I go to Eric, the whole idea of Charles saying he doesn't want to have kids. Again, in a lot of Western cultures with the birth rate declining, like it feels very much like these are the kind of conversations people might have today, in a different way, but still, which I feel like helps the get the audience interested. Eric, thoughts?
I was just going to bring attention to the sort of, I think it was Eustace's line where he says something like, let's go warm our brains with half a pint or something something like that. Basically, they're going to go drink with his mates. And then I noticed that he's coming back in a bit. And it just, there's a part of me going, well, in what state of mind is he going to be having this conversation? Because, obviously his father is distraught and sort of his brother has gone off to do brotherly things or bookworthy things. So yeah, it's just like Eustace coming in to carry on sort of the legacy of the family is going to be interesting.
Yeah, any other thoughts before we launch into Donald?
It was just, I'm fascinated by the whole Charles thing. But I just wonder whether because I haven't read the rest of the play, so no spoilers. Is it going to be like Love's Labour's Lost, where somebody who is completely committed?
Quack, quack, quack.
Thank you. Good reminder that is an author we can avoid discussing.
Sorry. I'm sure he didn't write it anyway. Oh boy. But whether his encounter with the opposite sex is going to, or whether his studies are going to survive encounters. So that's something that's in, and also in terms of performance, the extent to which you make him, he has to be a rounded character. I know he's obviously despair of his father, but I think because he takes himself so seriously, I think he deserves to be taken seriously, and that is much funnier to me anyway if he's treated seriously, and everybody else is in despair.
All right. Well,
that was it's a bit like, is it QI, where if you say something,
the siren goes off.
Sorry, yes. I promise I won't do that again. I think I did get a warning about.
There's so many other authors we can compare and discuss.
Okay.
Thank you, Donald. No, we all do it every once in a while. Okay, let us continue. Let's see what's going on with Eustace here. Brisac has just said Eustace, and then we enter Eustace, Egremont, Cowsy, and Andrew.
Sir?
Your ear in private.
I suspect my master has found a harsh welcome. He's gone supperless into his study. Could I find out the cause? It may be borrowing of his books, or so. I shall be satisfied.
My duty shall, sir, take any form you please. And in your motion to have me married, you cut off all dangers the violent heats of youth might bear me to.
It is well answered.
Nor shall you, my lord, or your fair daughter, for your fair daughter, ever find just cause to mourn your choice of me, the name of husband, nor the authority it carries in it, shall ever teach me to forget to be as I am now, her servant, and your lordship's. And, but that modesty forbids that I should sound the trump of mine own deserts, I could say my choice manners have been such as render me loved and remarkable to princes of the blood.
The king?
Nay, to the king and council.
These are court admirers, and ever echo him that bears the bag. He died, see thistling.
Then, for my hopes,
Nay, certainties.
they stand as fair as any man's. What can there fall in compass of her wishes, which she shall not be suddenly possessed of? Loves she titles? By the grace and favor of my princely friends, I am what she would have me.
He speaks well, and I believe him.
I could wish I did so. Pray you a word so, sir. He's a proper gentleman, and promises nothing but what is possible. So far I will go with you. And nay, I add, he hath won much upon me, and were he but one thing that his brother is, the bargain were soon struck up.
What's that, my lord?
The heir.
Which he is not, and I trust never shall be.
Come, that shall breed no difference. You see, Charles has given o'er the world. I'll undertake, and with much ease, to buy his birthright of him for a dry fat of new books, or nor shall my stage alone make way for him, but my elder brothers, who, being issueless, to advance our name, I doubt will not add his. Your resolution?
I'll first acquaint my daughter with the proceedings. On these terms, I am yours, as she shall be. Make you no scruple, get the writings ready. She shall be tractable. Tomorrow we will hold a second conference. Farewell, noble Eustace, and you brave gallants.
Full increase of honor wait ever on your lordship.
Exit
the,
Lewis.
The gout, rather, and a perpetual megrim.
You see, Eustace, how I travailed to possess you of a fortune you were not born to. Be you worthy of it, I'll furnish you for a suitor. Visit her and prosper in it.
Oh, she's mine, sir, fear it not. In all my travels I ne'er met a virgin that could resist my courtship.
Right. If take now, we are made forever, and will revel it.
Exit all except Andrew.
In tough Welsh parsley, which in our vulgar tongue is strong hempen halters, my poor master, cozened, and I, a looker on. If we have studied our majors and our minors, antecedents and consequents to be concluded coxcombs, we've made a fair hand on't. I'm glad I've found out all their plots and their conspiracies. This shall to old Monsieur Miramont one that, though he cannot read a proclamation, yet dotes on learning, and loves my master Charles for being a scholar. I hear he's coming hither. I shall meet him. If he be the table all used to, I'll ring such a peal, I shall go near to shake their bellroom peradventure. Beat him, for he is fire and flax. And so have at him.
All right, end of scene. Okay, thoughts on this? Aliki.
Well, I mean, this is shaping up to be a plot we know fairly well, in which the clever servant manages to get the, not stupid in this case, but absent-minded, shall we say, master on the right track. I hope he succeeds, because Charles might be a bit silly, but he's a much nicer person so far.
Yeah.
Lois.
Yeah, it's just a really well done first act, isn't it? I mean, it's set the whole thing up, and you got a sense of all the characters, and there's a sense of action going forward, especially with the servant, who is quite a nice part, isn't he? I mean, a clever servant who has learned quite a lot in Oxford or wherever they were. I guess which was Paris, in fact, the Sorbonne probably. But anyway, and who cares about his master? I mean, these are all really pretty nice people, though it's obvious that it's interesting that Eustace has come with these two other people who are presumably going to add something to this. And also we've just heard of another character who I see is about to appear in the next act. So again, it's kind of pointing forward, new things to expect.
Alan.
Yeah, what struck me is so far, with the exception of Cowsy and Egremont, all of the characters are three-dimensional. Cowsy and Egremont are basically there as, at the moment, it appears, just boozing mates for Eustace. But all of the others, including, as we said, the lower class characters, the serving characters, are all rounded, recognizable personalities.
Eric.
What I find interesting is that, like, I mean, okay, yes, you can kind of see why Andrew is so, worried about his master and so on and so forth, and that he's cousin and all that. But I mean, I don't know if this can be considered conspiracy, because like he kind of got the choice and he just went, I'm gonna go read. But though he is a nice person, obviously, in this context. And there's a part of me going, like, how would Angelina react from the first act, sort of, because we've not seen her since the beginning of the play. So when Sylvia and Angela actually meet him, both Eustace and presumably they get to meet both sons. So yeah, it should be interesting.
Lois.
Yeah, I think the reason Andrew says conspiracy is that his father has more or less said, oh, we can get him to trade his birthright for essentially a mess of pottage. I mean, it's, get him a few books and he'll be happy to stop being the heir. And actually, it's pretty shocking, overturning the whole system of primogeniture, I think, or I think it would be for most people. It's what sort of everything was based on, even though it's a silly system. So yeah, I think it is sort of. I mean, they're trying to take advantage of his simplicity.
Aliki.
Yeah, I agree. And also, he wasn't presented with, hello, there is a young woman coming who is potentially to be married. Would you like to meet her? He was presented with, how about getting married someday? Which is a different thing.
Yeah.
Granted, when you have a guest over and you just immediately open a book, that somewhat cuts off some avenues of conversation.
Yeah.
But also,
Eric.
we've seen that this has happened before, because what's his face, Brisac actually goes, yes, to my elder brothers, who is issueless. So it's kind of like there must be some precedent before, like, sort of there must be some precedent in the family. Like maybe he takes after his uncle or something.
Well, I think partly that's, just raising the stakes of, like, it'll be a lot of money. It'll be a lot of wealth, because it's not just mine, it's also my siblings' wealth. Other thoughts? All right, well, let's move on to Act 2, Scene 1. Enter Miramont and Brisac.
Nay, brother.
Pray, sir, be not moved. I meddle in no business but mine own, and in mine own 'tis reason I should govern.
But how to govern them, then? And understand, sir, and be as wise as you are hasty, though you be my brother, and from one blood sprung, I must tell ye heartily, and home too.
What, sir?
What I grieve to find. You are a fool, and an old fool, and that's two.
Well, part 'em, if you please.
No, they're entailed to 'em. seek to deprive an honest, noble spirit, your eldest son, and your very image. But he is so like you that he fares the worse for it, because he loves his book and dotes on that, and only studies how to know things excellent above the reach of such coarse brains as yours. Such muddy fancies that never will know farther than when to cut your vines and cozen merchants and choke your hidebound tenants with musty harvests.
You go too fast.
Not come to my pace yet, because he has made his study all his pleasure, and is retired into his contemplation, not meddling with the dirt and chaff of nature, that makes the spirit of the mind mud too. Therefore must he be flung from his inheritance? Must he be dispossessed? Monsieur Jingle Boy, his younger brother,
You forget yourself.
because he's been at court and learned new tongues and how to speak a tedious piece of nothing to vary his face, as seamen do their compass, and worship images of gold and silver, and fall before the sheep calves of the season. Therefore must he jump into his brother's land.
Have you done yet, and have you spake enough in praise of learning, sir?
Never enough.
But, brother, do you know what learning is?
It is not to be a justice of the peace, as you are, and palter out your time in the penal statutes to hear the curious tenets controverted between a Protestant constable and a Jesuit cobbler, to pick natural philosophic out of bawdry, when your worship's pleased to correctify a lady. Nor 'tis not the main moral of blind justice, which is deep learning, when your worship tenants bring a light cause and heavy hens before ye, both fat and feasible, like a goose or pig, and then you sit like equity with both hands weighing indifferently the state of the question. These are your quodlibets, but no learning, brother.
You are so parlously in love with learning that I'd be glad to know what you understand, brother. I'm sure you have read all Aristotle.
Faith, no, but I believe I have a learned faith, sir, and that's it makes a gentleman of my sort, though I can speak no Greek. I love the sound on't. It goes so thundering as it conjured devils. Charles speaks it loftily, and if thou wert a man, or hadst but ever heard of Homer's Iliads, Hesiod, and the Greek poets, thou wouldst run mad and hang thyself for joy thou hadst such a gentleman to be thy son. Oh, he has read such things to me.
And you do understand them, brother?
I don't know. That's not material. The sound's sufficient to confirm an honest man. Good brother Brisac, deuce young courtier that wears the fine clothes and is the excellent gentleman, the traveller, the soldier, as you think, to understand any other power than his tailor, or knows what motions is more than a horse race, what the moon means, but to light him home from taverns, where the comfort of the sun is, but to wear slashed clothes in't. And must this piece of ignorance be pumped up, because it can kiss the hand and cry, sweet lady? Say it has been at Rome and seen the relics, drunk your Verdea wine, and rid at Naples, brought home a pox of Venice treacle with it to cure young wenches that have eaten ashes. Must this thing, therefore?
Yes, sir, this thing must. I will not trust my land to one so sotted, so grown like a disease unto his study, he that will fling off all occasions and cares, to make him understand what state is, and how to govern it, must by that reason be flung himself aside from managing. My younger boy is a fine gentleman.
An ass! It's gingerbread, gilt over to please foolish girls and puppets.
You are my elder brother?
So I had need and have an elder wit. Thou shouldst shame us all else. Go to, I say. Charles shall inherit.
I say no. Unless Charles had a soul to understand it, can he manage 6,000 crowns a year out of the metaphysics? Or can all his learned astronomy look to my vineyards? Can the drunken old poets make up my vines? I know they can drink them, or your excellent humanists sell them the merchants for my best advantage. Can history cut my hay or get my corn in, and can geometry bend it in the market? Shall I have my sheep kept with a Jacob's staff now? I wonder you will magnify this madman, you that are old and should understand.
Sayest thou, monstrous piece of ignorance in office, thou that hast no more knowledge than thy clerk infuses, thy dapper clerk larded with ends of Latin, and he no more than custom of offences. Irretrievable ounce, that thy formal band strings, thy ring nor pomander cannot expiate for, dost thou tell me I should? I'll pose thy worship in thine own library and almanac, which thou art daily poring on, to pick out days of iniquity to cozen fools in, and full moons to cut cattle. Dost thou taint me, that have run over story, poetry, humanity?
As a cold nipping shadow does ears of corn and leave 'em blossom. Put up your anger. What I'll do, I'll do.
Thou shalt not do.
I will.
Thou art an ass, then, a dull, old, tedious ass. Thou art 10 times worse and of less credit than Dunce Hollingshead, the Englishman that writes of snows and sheriffs.
Enter Lewis.
Well, take your pleasure. Here's one I must talk.
Good day, sir.
Fair to you, sir.
May I speak with you?
With all my heart, I was waiting on your goodness.
Good morrow, Monsieur Miramont.
Oh, sweet sir, keep your good morrow to cool your worship's pottage. A couple of the world's fools met together to race up dirt and dunghills.
Are they drawn?
They shall be ready, sir, within these 2 hours, and Charles set his hand.
'Tis necessary, for he being a joint purchaser, though your state was got by your own industry, unless he seal to the conveyance, it can be of no validity.
He shall be ready and do it willingly.
He shall be hanged first.
I hope your daughter likes.
She loves him well, sir. Young Eustace is a baits to catch a woman, a budding, sprightly fellow. You are resolved, then, that all shall pass from Charles?
All. He's nothing. A bunch of books shall be his patrimony, and more than he can manage too.
Will your brother pass over his land, too, to your son Eustace? You know he has no heir.
He will be flayed first, and horse collars made of skin.
Let him alone. I, the wilful man, my state shall serve the turn, sir. And how does your daughter?
Ready for the hour, sir, and like a blushing rose that stays the pulling.
Tomorrow, then's the day.
Why then, tomorrow I'll bring the girl. Get you the writings ready.
But hark you, monsieur, have you the virtuous conscience to help to rob an heir, an elder brother, of that which nature and the law flings on him? You were your father's eldest son, I take it, and had his land. Would you had had his wit, too, or his discretion, to consider nobly what 'tis to deal unworthily in these things. You say he's none of yours? He's his son, and he will say he is no son to inherit above a shelf of books. Why did he get him? Why was he brought up to write and read and know things? Why was he not, like his father, a dumb justice, a flat, dull piece of phlegm shaped like a man, a reverend idol in a piece of arras? Can you lay disobedience, want of manners, or any capital crime to his charge?
I do not, nor do not weigh your words. They bite not at me, sir. This man must answer.
I have done it already, and given sufficient reason to secure me. And so, good morrow, brother, to your patience.
Good morrow, Monsieur Miramont. Exit Brisac and Lois.
Good nightcaps keep brains warm, or maggots will breed in them. Well, Charles, thou shalt not want to buy thy books yet. The fairest in thy study are my gift, and the University Louvain for thy sake hath tasted of my bounty. And to vex the old doting fool thy father and thy brother, they shall not share a salts of mine between them. Nay, more, I'll give thee 8,000 crowns a year in some high strain to write my epitaph.
Exit Miramont, end of scene. Okay, thoughts on this one?
That was fun.
Yeah, Aliki, you first want to say anything more on that, and then I'll go to Sarah.
I mean, again, it's a very endearing character, you know. He frankly admits that he has no knowledge. He says, I just like to listen to the words I don't understand. Isn't it clever that he knows these things and I don't? And then this kind of delightful little Jeremiah on corrupt judges saying, you know, oh, you take bribes, brother, and you call yourself a learned man, and you're terrible to your tenants and unfair. I mean, just lovely. Sure, he's an idealist. I like him.
Sarah?
Yeah, no, Aliki beat me to it. I was just going to say the same thing, really. Another brilliant character, and I just loved that bit. I just loved it where he was like, do you understand it? No, but it sounds really good. It was just, yeah, made me laugh a lot.
Alan?
Yeah, I'm just beginning to wonder now which is the two characters we've met who are the elder brothers is the title character.
Well, I think it's probably Charles, because the whole thing is really about what's going to happen to him.
But yeah, I mean, it is worth noting that there's more than one elder brother, different fraternal relationships going on here. Lois, thoughts?
Yeah, yes, I think sort of it's like what you were saying earlier. This would be quite relevant to a modern audience. All this stuff about what is the use of all this learning, and especially all this literary knowledge, and it's not going to make any money, is it? I mean, and the nice thing is that it's being defended by someone who is actually practically illiterate, and you know, who just likes it for, you know, for its own sake, or in a kind of sentimental way. So it's not even as if you know, some highly learned intellectual were arguing this, or saying, you know, well, you know, I know a great deal, and look at all the money I've made through my knowledge, or, you know, something obvious like that. It's much more clever, really, and indirect.
Yeah. Other thoughts? So we've been told that the daughter, Angelina, has met Eustace and likes Eustace. To those of us who don't know what's happening later in this play, including me, what thoughts on that? I kind of expected to see their first meeting.
Yes, I think it's rather interesting that we don't. I mean, it may be that it may just be you know, compression, but it may be that the author is getting round a kind of problem, which won't be apparent unless we see what happens next, I suppose. But I mean, you know, you can see that whatever sort of feeling she ends up expressing for Eustace, and presumably about Charles as well. We're not even told if she's met Charles, I think, which seems a bit odd. I guess because really the father just decides it's going to be Eustace, and so that's the only one that he introduces to her. I mean, the whole thing seems rather odd, and I think it's probably meant to.
Sarah?
Yeah, well, you could imagine that, like, Eustace would be really kind of up for meeting her, whereas Charles is probably off in the library with his nose in the book and maybe hasn't even paid attention to what's going on. So, I mean, there's that, but I agree it's odd. I want to just change the subject slightly, but I just wanted to flag up. Eric said something in the chat about Holinshed that I think he should expand on, because I thought it was quite a fun and interesting point.
Basically, where's that? I can't find the line now. Anyway, he goes on about how that dunce Englishman Holinshed, yeah, I can almost say it, Holinshed, who you know, writes about snow and sheriffs, and basically it's he like the whole concept, like he was sort of the source material for Arden of Famersham. And supposedly in Arden of Famersham, the way they knew he was murdered was because they dragged him in the snow and they found the blood in the snow and stuff, which is kind of a crap way of hiding a body. But I mean, anyway, if you want to take notes, no, I'm kidding, but so it's like, even however many years later, well, I mean, not centuries later, but yeah, clearly they did their homework on all those plays and like, yeah.
Sarah.
Well, either that, or I'm just thinking maybe Arden was just a really, really popular play and was still. I just find it fascinating that, because I hadn't picked up. I noticed the Holinshed joke, but I hadn't picked up on the fact that it was Arden until Eric said it, and it's like Holinshed was so popular, and everyone knew who Holinshed was, and because he wrote this whole history, it's like they could have picked anything, but the fact that this seems to be referring to Arden makes me think, oh yeah, Arden. People are still getting jokes about Arden, so it must have been on. It must have been played. But Lois, I don't know if you know more about that.
No, I was going to say that to complain because Holinshed writes about snows and sheriffs. This may just be, in fact, it's not terribly fair to Holinshed. It sounds more like Stowe, somebody who says in this year so-and-so was sheriff and there was snow this year and there was a bad harvest this year. And, in other words, this is just boring stuff and kind of a chronicle of unrelated facts. And I wondered whether that was all he meant by it. But on the other hand, if it was a reference, it would be a rather oblique one to Arden of Faversham, but the story itself in Holinshed was famous. The play may have been still by this time. It would be now about 20 or 30 years later, but I believe it was, I think the translation of it was being acted on the continent. It was one of the English plays that was performed abroad. So it's possible, but I'm not sure if the Holinshed, because if they were thinking of the play, they wouldn't be thinking of Holinshed. If they were thinking of Holinshed, they probably wouldn't be thinking of the play.
Yeah, but also wasn't Arden like sort of accused of stealing land inappropriately? So that would have been a link as well. Like sort of stealing land from the abbey, blah blah blah, and all that.
Well, yeah, it's set in
As
the period, the reign of Edward VI and the period of real selling of abbey lands and so on. But yeah, but of course, well, it's happening in England, and we're supposed to be in France, so it's kind of a dragged in reference. It's rather odd, really. Yeah, dragging in a joke about Holinshed anyway at this point. But I think it's kind of like other references to things in the past, when they weren't as smart as we are now, or, they're more pedantic or something.
Alan.
I'm just wondering whether the French setting is yet another one of these red herrings we get. We've had a number of plays recently where we've done which are set in parts foreign, and yet there's so much London in them that I always find it, we've changed the location to protect ourselves against lawsuits and any upset mobs.
Any other thoughts on the scene? Eric.
This is probably irrelevant, but what I'm thinking of, because we're talking about primogeniture. Okay, yeah, well, that thing. That I can't say properly. Because like at the time, wasn't the king hadn't the king lost his elder son by like sort of death and other things? So they would have sorry, I'm just laughing because I can see Aliki laughing. But like they would have sort of having an excuse to give the spare, so to speak, a role in the family business that would have been important as well.
I don't know. It wouldn't be an excuse. Certainly James's eldest son died, and the king on the throne, at any rate, at the time that this was revived with that prologue, would have been Charles I, the younger son. But I'm not sure if people would have thought in those terms. I mean, the elder brother, because if they did, there's a whole other thing. I mean, there was a whole mythology around Prince Henry, who died in 1612, and how wonderful he would have been as a king, and so much better than his brother, and so on. But I don't really think any of that's playing into this.
Other thoughts so far? Well, let's continue on. We are on Act 2, Scene 2. Enter Eustace, Egremont, Cowsy.
How do I look now to my elder brother? Nay, 'tis a handsome suit.
No, courtly, courtly.
I'll assure you, gentlemen, my tailor has travelled, and speaks as lofty language in his bills, too. The cover of an old book would not show thus. Fie, fie, what things these academics are, these bookworms, how they look.
They are mere images, no gentle motion or behaviour in them. They'll prattle ye of primum mobile and tell a story of the state of heaven, what lords and ladies govern in such houses, and what wonders they do when they meet together, and how they spit snow, fire, and hail like a juggler, and make a noise when they are drunk, which we call thunder.
They are the sneakingest things and the contemptiblest. Such small beer brains, but ask them anything out of the element of their understanding, and they stand gaping like a roasted pig. Do they know what a court is, or a council, or how the affairs of Christendom are managed? They know anything but a tired hackney. They cry absurd as a horse understood 'em. They have made a fair use of your elder brother, a pretty piece of flesh.
I thank him for it. Long may he study to give me his state. Saw you my mistress?
Yes, she's a sweet young woman, but be sure you keep her from learning.
Songs she may have, and read a little unbaked poetry, such as the dabblers of our time contrive, that has no weight or wheel to move the mind, nor indeed nothing but an empty sound. She shall have clothes, but not made by geometry, horses and coach, but of no immortal race. I will not have a scholar in mine house above a gentle reader. They corrupt the foolish women with their subtle problems. I'll have my house called Ignorance, to fright prating philosophers from entertainment.
It will do well. Love those that love good fashions, good clothes, and rich, then fight men to admire 'em, that speak the little of court. 'Tis great learning to ride well, dance well, sing well, or whistle coolly. They're rare endowments, that they have seen far countries, and can speak strange things, though they speak no truths. But then they make things common. When are you married?
Tomorrow, I think. We must have a mask, boys, and of our own making.
Tis not half hour's work. A cupid and a fiddle, and the thing's done. And let's be handsome. Shall be gods or nymphs?
Why, nymphs with beards?
That's true. We'll be knights then. Some wandering knights that lied here on a southern.
Let's go, let's go. I must go visit, gentlemen, and mark what sweet lips I must kiss tomorrow.
And exits, the three of them. All right, thank you. Yes, finished with that scene of the younger brother Eustace and his two gallant friends talking about how great ignorance is. Thoughts?
I mean,
Yes, Aliki?
so this is bringing back memories of high school, as the two tribes here, the nerds on the one hand and the popular fashionable kids on the other. And the popular fashionable kids are living up to my worst stereotypes about them. Yeah, let's go do that. Let's go do that. Ignorance is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric, thoughts?
Yeah, basically I like how it does present the sort of basic issue of like, yeah, no, if you educate women, it is very dangerous. So it's like make sure you keep her from learning, but
Yeah.
they don't specify learning what. They just sort of go, you know, if she learns anything more than like her current education, you're in trouble.
Songs and unbaked poetry only.
Yeah.
Lois, thoughts?
Yeah, I think if anybody is kind of weighing the chances of the two young men, or just trying to decide between them, this is certainly pushing it in one direction. I mean, I don't think anybody could be terribly sympathetic to somebody who wanted his wife to be as dumb as possible and to think of nothing but fashion and so on. Also, their attitude to writing a masque is pretty casual, you know, Cupid and a fiddle and the thing's done. I mean,
Yeah, 'tis not half an hour's work.
yeah, oh yeah, it's going to be like that, yeah.
Other thoughts on this scene?
I guess there's one other thing. I mean, I don't know if you've been noticing the rhythm, but Fletcher has a very distinctive style. I mean, one thing about it is just the extremely large number of feminine endings. That is, lines that end with the da-da or dada. You know, let's see. I mean, for example, Cowsy's speech: "It will do well. Love those that love good fashions, good clothes and rich, that invite men to admire 'em. That speak the lisp of court, oh, 'tis great learning. To ride well, dance well, sing well, or whistle courtly." You notice how the stress on all of those is a weak final syllable. This actually led people at one point to enjoy talking about, you know, because these are often called feminine endings, to talk about the feminine qualities of Fletcher. And there is some ridiculous stuff about his relationship with Beaumont, and how Beaumont is the more manly of the two, and Fletcher is all feminine, you know, which is just idiotic. But it's actually a very, very nice kind of rhythm. I mean, you know, once you notice it, it's actually, I think, rather easy to say too, for some reason.
Yes, the lines themselves are very speakable, aren't they? There isn't that sort of convoluted syntax that can trip you up, which is, and yeah, I mean, it is very actable. I think any acting company would be able to get stuck into this quite easily.
Yeah, and I think, Donald, I think you were the one who mentioned earlier that the punctuation in our script can be a little funky sometimes, as it often is.
Yes.
But like the fact that we're able to, you know, that we're not tripping on it despite like, and it's not too bad really, but the fact that, you know, it's a sign of how relatively easy to read this is. Eric, were you raising your hand?
Well, yeah, the nymphs with beards just made me think of Baldric in a dress, which is kind of a very standard image from Blackadder, I guess, the Elizabethan period, but which is irrelevant to this. But I'm just wondering, because I don't know very much history in terms of educational history, whether like riding well, dancing well, singing well, or like sort of, and knowing how to dress were things that women were expected to know, or like were expected to be educated in back then. I mean, it doesn't really matter for like the play itself, but I'm just curious because like if they're being juxtaposed with like the actual learning and pursuit of scholarly endeavors.
Any responses to that, Lois?
I mean, these are things all aristocrats were expected to be good at. And dancing, for example, was something that people spent ages on. They practiced the dances in those court masques, sometimes for months beforehand. You know, these were, you know, if you read the courtier, the Castiglione, the point about all these things, though, was that you were supposed to do them so well that it looked as if you hadn't practiced them. You know, this is the notion of sprezzatura, the sort of the casualness, because it played into the idea that this was a natural quality of aristocrats, which no pleb could ever possibly acquire. And of course, I mean, that's one reason everybody was so nervous about actors, because they acquired all these things as they had to imitate them. And then that kind of made nonsense of the whole notion of natural gifts.
Other thoughts before we move into what will be, I believe, the final scene for today? All right. Act 2, Scene 3. We have Ralph the cook, Andrew, and Gilbert the butler.
And how does my master?
He's at's book, peace, coxcomb, that such an unlearned tongue as thine should ask for him.
Does he not study conjuring too?
Have you lost any plate, butler?
No, but I know I shall tomorrow at dinner.
Then tomorrow you shall be turned out of your place for it. We meddle with no spirits of the buttery, they taste too small for us. Keep me a pie in folio, I beseech thee, and thou shalt see how learnedly I'll translate him. Shall's have good cheer tomorrow?
Excellent good cheer, Andrew.
The spite on't is that much about that time I shall be arguing, or deciding rather, which are the males or females of red herrings, and whether they be taken in the Red Sea only, a question found out by Copernicus, the learned motion maker.
Ay, marry Butler, here are rare things. A man that looked upon him would swear he understood no more than we do.
Certain a learned Andrew.
I've so much on it, and am so loaded with strong understanding, I fear they'll run me mad. Here's a new instrument, a mathematical glister to purge the moon with when she is laden with cold phlegmatic humours, and here's another to remove the stars when they grow too thick in the firmament.
Oh, heavens! Why do I labour out my life in a beef pot and only search the secrets of a salad and know no further?
They are not revealed to all heads, these. Far above your element of fire, cook. I could tell you of Archimedes' glass to fire your coals with, and of the philosopher's turf that ne'er goes out, and Gilbert Butler. I could ravish thee with two rare inventions.
Well, what are they, Andrew?
The one to blanch your bread from chipping space, and in a moment, as thou wouldst an almond, the sect of the Epicureans invented that. The other, for thy trenchers, that's a strong one, to cleanse you 20 dozen in a minute, and no noise heard, which is the wonder, Gilbert, as this was out of Plato's new ideas.
Why, what a learned master dost thou serve, Andrew?
These are but the scrapings of his understanding, Gilbert, with gods and goddesses and such strange people he deals and treats with in so plain a fashion as thou dost with thy boy that draws thy drink, or Ralph there with his kitchen boys and scalders.
But why should he not be familiar and talk sometimes, as other Christians do, of hearty matters and come into the kitchen and there cut his breakfast?
And then retire to the buttery and there eat it. Drink a lusty bowl to my younger master, that must now be the heir, will do all these. Ay, and be drunk too. These are mortal things.
My master studies immortality.
Now thou talk'st of immortality, how does thy wife, Andrew? My old master did you no small pleasure when he procured her and stocked you in a farm. And if he should love her now, as he hath a colt's tooth yet, what says your learning and your strange instruments to that, my Andrew? Can any of your learned clerks avoid it? Can you put by his mathematical engine?
Yes, or I'll break it. Thou awakenst me. And I'll peep in the moon this month, but I'll watch for him.
A bell rings.
My master rings. I must go make him a fire and conjure o'er his books.
Adieu, good Andrew, and send thee manly patience with thy learning.
And exit. End of scene.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mm.
All right, we have more discussions of
Ooh,
learning, this time
yes.
between the servants. Lois first.
Yeah. We also have another plot sort of vaguely hinted at. It was hinted at earlier, I think, when there was a reference to Andrew's wife, and he mentioned in an aside that he had to keep her out of Brisac's clutches, and it looks as if someone's raised this again. So this is presumably going to be part of the plot.
I was just going to say that. That's the second mention. I bet I have a guess as to how it might resolve, but I'm not going to say it yet.
Mhm.
Okay, other thoughts? Alan.
Yeah, I mean, the two more junior servants, Gilbert and the cook, both seem to be very well written, but really at a level which doesn't actually accord with their status.
Mm.
They do seem a little bit too erudite to be in those roles.
This is one reason why Fletcher's plays were popular, actually, that they did make everybody speak well, that you were getting consistently witty dialogue. I mean, I think the sort of late 17th, early 18th century liked to contrast wit and humor. Humor meaning really the kind of laughter that comes from somebody's personality rather than from anything clever they actually say. Clearly, this play is much more about what people say than what they're like, although you could say Charles's character is created by the way people keep talking about books and all the mentions of learned authors. I mean, it is kind of their stereotypical scholar who is always, I think, depicted as dropping the names of Latin writers. I mean, even nowadays, probably if you wanted immediately to give that sort of impression, you might have somebody coming on and saying, something about Sartre, or I've just been reading Derrida, but you could also say, Plato and Aristotle both have a great deal to teach us, and even now, it's this kind of thing, the name dropping, I think, that's mainly associated with the kind of sort of shorthand for scholarship.
Eric.
I just wanted to draw our attention to Ralph's comment about like, oh heavens, why do I labor out my life in a beef pot and only search the secrets of a sad? Like, I love the way that's written, because you could do it either really, really honestly, like sort of like he's just distraught that he doesn't actually know more, or he's just being really, really sarcastic and caustic and sort of like, oh great, yeah, why don't you just get out my kitchen, boys, or something like that. So it's kind of
I think I prefer the latter reading, that he's sussed it, and he thinks the rest of them are idiots, and he's sort of maybe he's found the secret of not happiness but contentment, maybe.
Yes, sir. There's this constant comparison and contrasting of the practical knowledge that this cook is accustomed to using, and the philosophy that in this scene Andrew is going on about. And yeah, I enjoyed the practical things being mortal things, but the philosophy being immortality. Other thoughts on this scene?
Well, also the red herrings, the males or females of red herring, was quite fun.
Aliki.
Yeah, I haven't been quite sure what to do with Andrew, because when I first read him, I felt that he was actually complaining about his master. But in this scene, I think I worked out that it's all humble brag, and everything that's going on is a status game. And this would be a really fun little scene to play with status exercises with, to find who's, the one-upmanship of it.
You mean the way he refers to the scrapings of his master's understanding that he's utilizing, that he's using that as a status?
Yeah, and that he's saying,
them.
oh, you're going to have fun, but poor me, I'm going to go off and be studying. But what he's actually saying is, you idiots are going to be guzzling and gorging, but me, I have a mind for loftier things, thanks to my more sophisticated master. The other two are cutting him down with, and how about this? And how about this? And what about your wife, by the way?
Lois?
Yeah, that's more or less what I was going to say. I mean, that's why they bring up the fact that if he becomes a cuckold, then they will be vastly superior to him, whether they know anything or not. Yes, and I was just remembering an earlier example, which is, in fact, I don't think we've read The White Devil yet, but no, it's not quite. Actually, it is in The Duchess of Malfi. They talk about Bosola as having been a scholar and then it's the same kind of idiotic study of total trivia. I think he had studied himself almost blind to know the true symmetry of Caesar's nose by a shoehorn or something like that. And that's like the red herrings line.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
I'm just wondering about all the mentions of the moon, because, like, I mean, obviously the moon is something they would have studied as part of like astronomy and astrology, I think. Like, you know, sort of location and sort of yeah, but there are so many mentions of it that it just seems like it should be important and sort of all people the moon for him and all that stuff. Obviously, because you know, dirty deeds are done by night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what's meant there. Some of the references to the moon might be lunacy as well. I mean, people being governed by the moon. Yeah.
All right. So that was the last scene to read for today. So last thing for this session is final thoughts on everything we've read from the first scene, the only one where we've seen Angelina, who's been discussed much since, through this one. Let's start with Donald.
Interesting you mentioned that because it's been the men talking so far, hasn't it? Really, that's been so I mean, much as we've been enjoying it, that women have been very much off stage, for the majority.
Yeah, we'll see whether that shifts or not. Any other final thoughts, Donald?
No. I'm having a ball. I mean, it's a lovely play. Great discussion.
Yeah.
Alan, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting on with things. I've not really found any wasted words in there.
There's no.
It's tightly written, and I think with a reasonable amount of business going on, particularly when you've got the three semi-drunken courtiers. Well, that's how I picture them anyway. They could probably have quite a lot of fun, and maybe a bit of horseplay or whatever going on. I think part of the reason we've only seen the two female roles so far, and that was in scene one, is the key difference between the pre-Civil War and the post-Civil War period is that those would, of course, been paid by males. And we have found in many of the plays that the female roles are potentially underwritten because they were concerned about how much material you could give to a young boy actor.
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's always exceptions to that. How much this play will be an exception, we'll find out in the later sessions, I suppose. Lois, final thoughts.
Yeah, I like this play very much, and I remember liking it when I saw it, and indeed liking it when I first read it, probably 60 years ago. It seems even more relevant, if anything, as we're reading it now. I'd love to see a revival of it.
Aliki, final thoughts.
Well, like Lois, I'm reading it for the first time, but like her, I like it very much, and I would really love to see it staged. You'd have to do very, very little, maybe cut down some of the longer speeches a bit. Otherwise, it's hugely playable, hugely accessible and fun, as is with these wonderfully characterful parts.
Sarah, final thoughts.
Yeah, I can only repeat what Aliki's just said. I mean, it's funny because even though the women have only been in one scene so far, I don't feel they're underwritten as yet. I feel that if it stays this way, then obviously they're going to become underwritten. But I'm just holding fire at the moment because I have a feeling, I don't know. It was a bit odd that we didn't have a scene where Angelina met Eustace, but I don't know. Maybe the actor was doubling. I don't know. But there's a lot of potential here. And we did a play. The last play I was involved in, the women had a lot to say in the first third of the play, and then they sort of disappeared and were very underwritten, and it was all a bit disappointing. So the fact that they haven't had said a lot here, I'm not too worried because they were both so well written in that first scene. I'm thinking, is a playwright really going to give them that much to say and then only put them in one scene? Are they going to write? Is he going to write such good speeches for them and then they're literally going to disappear? I hope not. I'm just going to be really interested to see what happens. But I mean, we haven't seen much of Charles either, you know, and the play is called The Elder Brother, so I'm assuming he's going to crop up a lot more later as well. But so far, I'm just loving it. I'm loving all these characters. The uncle's an absolute hoot. The servants are all really interesting. Yeah, there's a bit of intrigue going on there that, you know, we're not quite sure what's going on yet. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Great. Eric, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like everyone, I'm enjoying the play, but I do like how Miramont gets the sort of, well, not honored, but like sort of, he's the truth teller in the whole play. So thus far, so he kind of has this moment of going, you know, your son is a dick. Like, yeah, so kind of like he should be more like his older brother, but he's not. And it's like clearly he took after you, this brother, but he doesn't actually like verbalize that. But it's kind of, or does he? Maybe he does. Yeah, because he's like, he's not like a justice that just sits on his ass all day and does nothing. So yeah, it just kind of I'm curious to see how much pull he has with Lewis and because I assume he would be able to influence the situation as well. Will be fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely see more. All right. Well, thank you to all these wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. We will continue in the next session. And for now, have a good day, everybody. And good nightcaps. Keep your brains warm or maggots will breed in them.